Okay, okay. So today we're going to be discussing and practicing actual motifs and watercolor exercises. And one of the easiest and most accessible motifs is a floral, because that application can be used for so many greeting cards, whether it is, happy birthday or thinking of you or love you or even a condolence or a thank you note. Florals have a wide application. So there are 3 demos that I'm going to share with you today that I hope you will go on to practice. The first method is called line and wash. And basically, line and wash is you do a line drawing, and then, such as this, you do a line drawing and then you add color to it. There are some artists who do the wash first. They lay in fields of color and then they'll go back and add the line work on top of that. You can try it both ways, but because we're limited to a 1-hour Zoom, I'm going to demonstrate with the line drawing first and then adding color on that. Now, in this particular watercolor, now the bottom is a failure, but at the top isn't so bad. I think I can take my viewfinder and make a card out of there somewhere. But I did the initial drawing in pencil, and it really does not bother me if there are pencil lines present. You can also use a Sharpie, like I did here. That's with a Sharpie. And not all markers are water resistant, meaning if you use any old black marker to do your line drawing and then do a watercolor over it, if it is a water soluble marker, it's going to smear black ink all throughout your watercolor. So I know that Sharpies can take a wash over them. So I go through a lot of Sharpies. I like the extra fine and the fine point. You can get the fine point is really not all that fine. So to demonstrate, there's the then there's the Sharpie pen, which is extra fine point. This I did with a Sharpie pen, which is extra fine point. But to demonstrate, I'm going to use the Sharpie fine point, which is not all that fine. So what I want to show you briefly, and I'm just doing a loose demo because within this line and wash, there are other ways you can do it. I'm just going to mock in a fantasy floral. So let's just say the easiest thing to do is a daisy shape. So I start with my center, and then you just do random teardrops coming out, kind of maybe like a rounded edge triangle or a teardrop shape. And because things in nature are delightfully, perfectly imperfect, you don't have to make every little petal the same size or the same width. They can be a little wonky. Here on my daisy, where you see here, those petals are all different and they're kind of crumpled up, tucked and smushed by a little leaf kind of thing. So once I get my line drawing down, then I can apply color over it. Now, before I apply the color, I want to share with you a hack, and it's a common hack. It's using what we call an image transfer. If you are not completely confident in your drawing skills, and let's say you have a photograph of a rose and you're not sure, I don't know, I'm not great at drawing, but I really feel like I want to paint today. I don't want to draw, I want to paint. You can use what's called graphite paper, which is essentially carbon paper. But carbon paper, carbon is kind of schmeary, you know, it's smudgy. Graphite paper will not smudge as much. So what you can do, quick little hack on that, is take your carbon paper or your graphite paper, shiny side down on your paper, put your photograph on top of it. Yeah, I like to use a sharp pencil, and then just let me center this row so it'll be in the middle of the page. Now I'm just going to outline the lines on going with the pencil around the rows and basically trace out the lines I see on the rows. And artists use all kinds of image transfers, especially portrait artists. And Vermeer, if you saw the girl with the pearl earring, he was using a camera obscura, which projects the image so you can trace it. So please don't think this is cheating. It's just if you don't feel like drawing, or if you're doing portraits and you want that that exactness, then you would use one of these image transfer devices. And here's my traced rows. And now I can paint that as well. I just push down really hard on a pencil. You can use a mechanical pencil or a sharp pencil. So now what I'm going to do is apply color to this. So make sure my watercolors are awake and alive. I'm going to use a round brush, and we always dip our brushes in water before we hit them up with paint. And I'm going to start with this one first, this big bold one. In fact, I might even want a bigger brush for that. I encourage you to use large brushes. So here I'm just using, I've got a cadmium red, and I've got like a rose madder. I've got two different reds, and I've got a couple different yellows, because as we know, when you mix yellow and red together, you're going to get an orange. So what is fun to do is if you do like the inside of my petal, and again, I'm not being super staying in the lines. This is not coloring book. Well, I guess it is. If you have, if you're doing this line and wash, I guess you are coloring to a degree, but I'm just adding some red to the inside of my petals, because now I'm going to come back and hit the edges up with the yellow, and let the yellow and the red mix and mingle and do their watercolor magic. And where the two meet, and I'm just giving it a little, you know, a little smushing where they meet, where the orange and, I mean, where the yellow and the red meet. And where they meet, I get a nice mix of orange, like that. And when we work with watercolor, when I hold it up to the camera and it's really vertical, it's going to run more. A lot of times people, depending on how they want their watercolor to move on the page, they would work flat, or some artists put just a small support. So there's just a little bit of a tilt. What would that be, like a 10 or 20 degree? You don't want like a super, like it's on an easel, because if you did your watercolors on an easel, everything's going to drip down to the bottom. So sometimes I just, you know, move it around waiting for it to dry. Like that. And then if you want to do something interesting in the middle, because the middle, what do you call that? The anther, I don't know what it is. But again, this is just a fantasy floral. You could take a stiffer brush. This is a fan brush. And I'm going to use a burnt umber, which is, you know, like a brownish color, like a sienna kind of. Where's that raw umber? I forget. And now I'm just going to go in the middle and stipple, which is pounce the tip of my brush. I'm not really doing strokes. I'm just doing blotches, you know, spots, splotches. So you're pouncing a stiff brush into the paper. You're not stroking it back and forth. You're pouncing up and down. And then I just might go in and add a couple drops of green to see what happens when that brown and green start mixing together. I need a little more brown. And the less water you use, the more intense your color will be. And conversely, the more water you use, the more transparent your color will be. Watercolor is known for its transparency. And to layer colors on top of each other is fun. So now I've got a little bit of the puddle. And what I want to do, if I have that kind of puddle in the middle there, is just take a little paper towel and pounce it up there to kind of soak it up, because I didn't want that big puddle there. I just wanted to mix it up. So that essentially is line and wash. And where I did my little rose there, I can do the same thing. Now, most flowers, in the middle of the flower tends to be a little darker than the outside. And if you're doing, let's say, a rose, which is very circular, you want your brush strokes to be circular. So you'll move them around in a circle. Whereas with our daisy, we could stroke out. But for the rose, you want your strokes to emulate the shape, and therefore you would go around in a circular motion. So I'm just using a couple different reds to go around, and I might let that dry before I add another, maybe a pink on top of that. So that is line and wash. Or if you wanted to do wash and line, let me flip the page here. This is gonna get messy, but that's okay. This is just a scrapbook. What you would do is put your wash down first, where you would say, okay, I'm gonna have a flower here and a flower here and a flower here. And then when that dries, I would go back over it and delineate the lines with my Sharpie. But you can't do it while it's wet. It's got to be done when it's dry. So just to add to that, for my wash and line method, I'm now going to take some green, and to make a leaf shape, I'm just going to press down on the belly of my brush and pick it up, and press down in the belly of my brush and pick it up slightly towards me, like that. It might work better with a fatter brush. Maybe I can demonstrate it. This is a 20, size 20. The larger the number, the fatter the brush. So now I'm going to put my tip down, press down the belly, and lift it up. And you'll get a variety of shapes like that. And if you want your watercolors to mix and mingle, then you would touch the green to the red where it's still wet. And then they will pool together. Ooh, that could, yeah, that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting when it dries. It's always a surprise. Okay. So when this dries, I will do a line drawing over it, but I can't do that yet while it's wet. There's patience involved in watercolor. Drying is essential. If you use a hair dryer, which sometimes we do, you want to use it on the cool setting, and you want to keep it far enough away from your painting where it's not blowing the liquid pigment around. You just want to create an airflow to help expedite the drying process. So that's our first method, line and wash, or wash and line, depending on which way you like to do it best. And you also don't have to use a black outline. I might go back on this one where I just did the wash first and I'm waiting for this to dry. I might go back with my colored pencils, and not a black Sharpie or a pencil, but with a colored pencil, and use a red and pinks in that wash area and green pencils in the green area. It's all fun to experiment with the different effects you can get. Now, what I also want to demonstrate now are some loose petal shapes that we can make, which I just touched upon. I'm going to go into in more depth. That same method that I just mentioned about using your, oh, here I am, I left my brush in water. Ah, naughty girl. Also, what I do when I paint, I like to have clean, it's important to have clean water. They say, don't paint with water that you wouldn't let your goldfish swim in. So I'm swishing my brush around, but it's still got green paint in it. And my water now is an army green. So I have a dump bucket. So I dump out my dirty water. I might even give it a swish of clean. And now I have clean water, because I don't want to be using army green wash water when I'm now going to be using pink or red paint. It's going to make my colors muddy. So what I'm going to show you now is how we do a fast and loose floral shape like this, using a brush. And I'm going to show you this method, which is like, a daisy or a zinnia, and then a circular like a rose or a ranunculus, or what am I thinking of? One of those swirly things. Okay, so where a brush is concerned, the parts of the brush are, we have our handle, we have our ferrule, which is the metal crimp that holds all the bristles together. And then on the brush, and I'm using a round brush here, the belly of the brush is just that. It's the middle where it's the fattest. And the toe of the brush is all the way up here where the point is. So what I'm going to do to demonstrate this kind of floral shape is wet my brush, get my brush loaded up with paint. Get this. So that it's nice and juicy in the belly. And now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to put the tip of my brush down on the paper, smush the belly down, smash the brush down, and then lift it up towards you. So there's like a little, almost like a teardrop shape, like that. And you could fill a whole page just doing this. And it's good practice for brush control. So I put the toe down, and again, next to it, smush it down, lift it up, and now I've got the petal next to that one. So I'm working from the outside in. So I load up my brush again, put the tip down, smush down the belly, then gently lift it up towards me. And this time maybe I'll add a little bit of yellow in there just to make it interesting. Put the tip down, smush it down, lift it back up. And I like it when they're not all uniform. And I don't have to leave a hole in the middle. This time I think I'm going to smush it down, and I'm going to join one petal to another like that. And then I'll keep turning my page, adding more pigment. And this is really drippy, so you might want to work flat. I know that once I tilt this up, it's going to run. But here I've created a shape by just making these marks. And these marks are just toe, belly, lift. Toe, belly smush, lift. So it's all about practicing the brush, tip, belly smush, lift. And then you can make these shapes, which work also for leaves. And so I'm just doing a whole line of these shapes. And I got a really full brush, and I was able to make 4 marks with 1 brush load of paint. And then depending on how you move the watercolor around, it will dry with beautiful variations. And if I want to do a different color next to it, and I want them to run, let's see what happens if I do like a rose madder next to it. Ooh, smush and then lift it up. And now the colors are really running together. Belly up, up. So I'm getting a lot of different shapes. It is a loose floral. If you want to do something super tight, then you could go back to like an image transfer and do a tracing of a rose or a flower or whatever. But loose florals, they're casual. They're applicable for so many card variations. So now that we've done this kind of teardrop shape, we can now apply that same kind of idea to a more circular motion to create a more rose shape. So what I'm going to do with that is I might move to a smaller brush. And again, don't worry about if it's not like looking like a rose as you make it. If it has an affectation or an impression of a rose, the way I do it here is I start in the middle and I make like a little mark, just a little mark. And then I practice making little arcs around it, just picking it up and moving my brush. I make a fine point and then I smush it and I twirl it. And then I come back and I put the tip down and I smush it and I kind of twirl it. You make an arc with it. And if the shape is kind of smushy and doesn't exactly look like a rose, well, that's okay. You can go back and say, okay, well, I'm going to add another little arc here. So this is all making more rounded, where you are putting your toe down and your belly, but you're giving it a little smile, like you're making a little smile with it, or a slight U shape. We all know how to make a smiley face. You're just not making the eyes. We're just making little arcs, little kind of like C's. So then you would take, you make like a little C in the middle, and you work almost, like laying bricks, kind of one interlinking in the crevice of another. Now, in the follow-up email, I'm going to send you a link to Snowberry Designs. Erin at Snowberry has a whole course and many YouTube videos on these loose florals that are very popular now. Even if you go to the Paper Source or one of those stores, they have wrapping paper that has all these fun loose florals. And even here, I'm not, see, I'm getting a little splotchy, and that's okay. It's the suggestion of a floral. You don't have to draw every little petal. Just twirl your brush around and have fun with it and see what shapes you can make. So when we're doing a more rose shape, we work in a more circular motion like that. And when that dries, you can come back in, use my brush off, and work on leaves. Now, for your leaves, I think my green needs to be a little more spritzy. For leaves, you can do that kind of, that toe down, belly lift up thing, like that. Or if you want a variation and you want to practice, you can take a thinner brush, and they make very thin. I'm going to grab this. I want to demo that also. They make very thin brushes called riggers. They make skinny lines. What is this? Happy Strokes. Okay. So as you can see with a rigger, it's going to make a very thin line like that. So you could come back in with a rigger and make strokes, and from the main line or your center of your frond or whatever you call that, you could make a line and bring out little strokey things from the center line like that. So depending on what kind of brushes you have, I encourage you to play with them to see what different strokes you can make with them. They also make, if you have brushes and you're looking for a new addition, they make this dagger brush or a triangle brush. And it's a brush that they like gave a haircut to. If I put it against a white background, you can see that it's been cut at the end to almost look like a triangle, a dagger. And this is great for foliage because it can make, that will drip if I tilt it up. The dagger brush, depending on how you twirl it, can make cool lines like that, which are great for leaves. So it's got a very pointy tip and then a belly. So it makes a thick and a thin line. So a thin and a thick line. So that's a fun brush to use also. But if you're limited to a round brush, then you can practice that toe heel thing, that toe belly lift thing, you know, the toe smush and lift to make your leaves. And also what you can do, let me rinse my brush, is make your leaf light. Like I'm going to make a pale yellow greenish leaf. I'm going to drop that in right here with a toe and a heel and drop that up in yellow. And now drop in a drop of green. And that's going to ooze and mix in there. So it will be, oh, that's really cool. The way it's kind of feathering out. And you can also dip your brush in half green, half yellow, or two colors. And that will give you that variegated look. Does it help if I tilt this light here? Maybe the light will help better there. I'm always trying to get the best light for you girls. All right. Okay, so that's practicing. How are we doing for time? Okay, that's practicing some leaf shapes. So I'm going to change my water. Oh, what did I do with that other one? Oh, from last week. All right, let me change my water because it's all murky again. Remember last week we were making different designs and different strokes on paper. This is just a bunch of lines I made with different greens and adding yellow to my greens. So if I want to do something crazy and abstract now with that, let me see, I need a surface. Where's my clipboard? All right, I'll put it up here. I can now play around with doing these fun like rosy floral shapes right on top of this, right on top of it, and going back and making some designs right on top of those lines and doing a floral shape right over that. And at this point in our painting experience, I encourage you to work larger than our card format, which is, you know, basically 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and get your skills down first. And then go back and say, well, I'm going to take a blank piece of, you know, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 paper. But sometimes when we get to the edges, We don't know if we want to bleed off the edge, which means your paint color goes right off the edge of the paper. Or if you're hindered by that, you know, that little border. Sometimes if you lay down tape, if you tape your paper down and you pick it up, when you're done, you have a nice white border around it. But I don't like to cramp myself in at this point with this definitive size of 4¼ by 5½. Or actually, I don't like to bring my card panel right to the edge of the card base. I like to leave a little border. So I would suggest working larger and then going back later with, you know, cut a viewfinder for yourself and saying, would I move a card? Would I make a card out of this section or that section? Next week is the week where we put it all together and we do the production. So I'll get more into the assembly next week. But for now, I encourage you, keep it loose, keep it larger than that, you know, 4x5 format. And we'll worry about cutting it down later because you don't have to cut it down to that size. We'll discuss that more next week when we get into our final stage of creating the card. Right now, we're creating motifs. So, and you can make a huge flower depending on how much you choose to work around. And your inside doesn't, the inner part of the flower doesn't have to be in the middle. You can make it asymmetrical, where the flower is kind of like at a tilt, where the center of the flower is off to the side, where you would be seeing the flower. I'm sorry, spam, of course. So it'd be like the flower was in a, you know, like a quarter profile, like instead of a profile and a straight on, it would be like 45-degree angle. So maybe make a little one over here. And I'm just making little arced swirls. And the more you do it, the more control you'll get over it. And I like to vary my brush strokes. So there's some fat, some thin, and sometimes they smush into each other. And sometimes, depending on the way I lift my brush up, I'll get a pleasant, unexpected little swirl. With watercolor, we strive to control it, but it always has a life of its own and a mind of its own. I'm trying to remember who said, oil paints are like dogs. They like to please. Watercolor is like cats. They do exactly as they want. So, yeah, now on this one, the center of my flower is off center, and that's perfectly fine. So I'm just having fun doing these little arcs on top of my green stripes, and we'll see where that takes me when it dries and what I want to do with it later. And I might add another color in there, you know, like a little bit of yellow to create some orange. Use whatever colors you have. You don't have to use real colors that are in nature. You know, you could make blue roses or, you know, have fun with it. Fantasy flowers are so much fun to do because it's therapeutic to just make these little designs, and you know, it's kind of like a Calgon take me away moment. Get lost in it. And you can spread them around. You can go back. Once these are dry, I might go back in with another color. Or if I don't care, I might try that other color and have them smush up next to each other so the colors run. And it doesn't bother me if my hand gets a little shaky. Some shaky strokes are just fine. Okay, so now that we covered line and wash and image transfer and some loose florals, I also want to, as long as we're on the topic of vegetation and botanicals, I want to show you, clean my water, another fun way to create the effect of, this is the time of year where you'll see a lot of tree designs. And it doesn't have to be associated with any particular holiday. When we see little tree designs, we, especially if they have, like here, I think I put some glitter on it to affect some snow. You get a wintry feeling. So what I want to share with you is an easy way to do that. Now here I first did a background of light blue. Now I also did a background of light blue on these two pieces of watercolor paper, but this I used an ultramarine blue. Here I believe I used a cobalt. Now watercolor, when it dries depending on the color, about 40% lighter than what you see when you put it on the paper. It dries lighter. So even though when my paper was wet, the blue looked like that blue, it dried like that, so much lighter. But it doesn't have to be blue. You could do it against a pink background. I just chose blue because it kind of affects a blue sky. So an easy way to make this kind of fir tree, I take my fan brush, or if you don't have a fan brush, you could probably do it with a flat brush, which is, like a rectangular brush. But I did not work with this with a round brush. I don't get the results I want with the round brush. So I'm going to add some green paint here to the tip of my fan brush. And I don't want gobs and gobs of paint, because what I'm going to do is I just want to kind of establish a center line. See, I just did a couple dabs of paint. I didn't draw a hard line, because when you look at a tree and the branches are in front of the tree trunk, you don't see a straight line. You don't see a hard line because the branches are obfuscating. They're in front of the tree trunk. So what I do is I get some paint on here, and now I'm going to dab. And the wider part, I'm just going to do a little dabbing. The wider part of the pine tree is at the bottom. I'll get the light up there just right for you. So the skinny part is at the top. So if I'm starting from the bottom, I'm going to decrease the lines at the top to create almost a triangle. Now, if I were, you don't always have to do a center line, but it helps with your eye to give you an idea. I'm going to do the one next to it now. So if you were to do strokes, you're going to get a different kind of tree. And if you want to do strokes, you're going to go from the inside out. Inside out. And you'll make the shorter lines as you go up the tree trunk. So the top of the tree is less wide, and the tree gets wider as you go down. So this side was just dabbing. This side is where I actually moved the brush and made a stroke from the inside out. And sometimes less is more, because as you can see what I'm doing here, I'm really adding a lot of paint, and this is getting to be a really full tree. So you could get the effect of snow with more white space and more density with more paint. And when this dries, you can add like little, here I did like little glittery things. So if you want to give the effect of snow, but all of these are done with this technique. Oh my God, this better. So this is fun to practice also. And again,
excuse me, were they all done using the fan brush?
I believe so. I believe so. Let's see what happens if I use a different brush. Let me pull up another piece of paper here. You're going to get different effects with different brushes. So let's try a round brush. If we were to take our center line, just make, and I'm gonna like kind of dot it, because like I said before, you don't see an entire tree trunk unless it's the winter and all the leaves are bare. And even then, it's just more interesting to see the trunk broken up. So if I were to use my basic round brush, if I want to start at the top, I could make little strokes. And I think the key is to work from the inside out. And your strokes will be getting wider as you go down. Now, you can now take some lines like in the middle to kind of, where you get that kind of look, and you could work it all the way down the trunk. And your thinner lines, or if you're just using the tip, and when you press down on the belly like I'm doing now, you're going to get a thinner line. Now see where this little area here, where this is called dry brush. That's where I have less paint on my brush, and it gives that kind of streaky, where it's not a solid line. It's kind of, there's light coming in there. And working from the inside out, you're going to get that tree effect. And because the tree isn't exactly like here where I have my center line, the tree isn't like a book where it, you know, it's like folds on itself. I'm going to have, oh, there's that painting. I wonder where that went. You're going to have some of the lines crossing the middle, because it's not like an open book. The branches are all over the place on a tree. And you could even do that with the dagger brush, which is really fun for botanicals. But this is like a boutique brush. You might not get it in your, if you're going to buy a certain basic art supplies, but it really makes a cool brush stroke. And I'm all about having the tools do half the job for you. My father was a tool engineer for IBM, so he always taught us having the right tools can make or break your job. And also the art supplies. I understand if you are not sure, you're just starting in watercolor, you might not want to invest in the top of the line paints, brushes, or paper, but it does make a difference. It does. If you're going to give yourself a splurge, buy one good brush, buy Arches paper, and it doesn't have to be a big pad. It could be, 4x6. It doesn't have to be the 11x15. And Holbein paints. I love those. So the bottom of your tree is going to be wider than the top, and you work from the inside where the trunk is out. And you put less pressure on your brush when you're lifting it up. So you're going to wind up with something. And it doesn't have to be symmetrical. Trees are not. You might wind up with a little Charlie Brown Christmas tree, and that's okay. So this side was made with the round brush. This side was made with the dagger brush. So depending on your tools, play with them and you'll get different results. Now, what I would recommend is if you do want to do a background color, do that first, like I did the blue here, let it dry, and then go over with green. Because if you decide now that you've done a green tree on a white ground and you want a blue sky, if you do it when this is dry, if you do a blue wash over it, you could move some of this green pigment, which means you'll smear it. And also now you're putting a blue cast on the green. So it could be like a blue spruce, which is a bluish color pine tree, a blue-green pine tree. But often in watercolor, we do our background first, and then we do our foreground item on top of it. There is a method of painting, negative shape painting, which is doing the background around your shape, where a negative shape painting would be if you're doing negative space, you are painting the space around your object. So I'm painting the space around the object. And when you, even now, if you look at something in your room, if you look at the bookcase along the wall, you might think that the wall is your background and the bookcase is your foreground, but the shape, the wall itself that surrounds your bookcase is a shape in and by itself. So it's training our eye, our artistic eye, to see not only the positive space, which is usually our image occupied on a background, but also to see the negative shapes that are involved in our artwork. The space around our focal point is equally important as the object that's occupying. And see here in this painting, the white is our negative shape. It's the shape that occupies the space between the flowers and around our objects. So when you hear different terms like, you know, I love the use of that negative space. Now you know what negative space is, or negative shapes. So today we talked about making motifs. We learned that we can do a method called line and wash, where we do a line drawing, such as this. And then now we're going to, it's almost like a coloring book. You'll color it in, and you don't have to be all staying in the lines about it. And this line and wash, you can say that the color is not matching up with the lines, and that's okay. You can do your wash first, or you can do your line first, but whatever you do, it's good to have it dry in between your two stages, or your lines will be blurred. We also
just showed us, can you did you do that kind of greenish yellow, did you do that first for the line drawing that you just showed us and that you showed us in the beginning?
this one?
Yeah, did you do the background color first or after?
No, I actually did the background last. The yellow was applied last.
Okay.
That's why you can see that there's some gaps, some white space.
Yeah.
So I often like to do that. Like in this one, even though it's all white background, when I'm done, I might give this a light blue background. And let me just see if I can affect this now, because what I would do, this might not be the right blue, but I don't care. This painting is not a winner. I might not want to butt right up next to the leaves or the rose. I might want to leave some white space when I do that blue background around it.
Yeah.
Just to, again, keep it casual, keep it impromptu, especially around this little frondy thing here, this kind of like ferny thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in between every little line. I'm just going to keep it loose, and loose florals are so much easier than trying to do something really tight and realistic. If you're new to watercolor or you're not confident in your drawing skills, keep it loose. Don't be so hard on yourself. I have to tell you, when I was in art school, and this goes back 40 something years ago, I remember this painting professor. I was so frustrated that I wasn't getting it where my paintings should be in my head. And he just patted my shoulder and said, don't be so hard on yourself. You're not that good yet. Yet. And the fact that he said yet gave me the hope that if I keep practicing, whether it's painting, piano, tennis, whatever, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. And if you approach your artwork with a sense of abandon and a sense of looseness, that feeling will carry itself across and through your art. If you approach your art all tight and insecure and, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm afraid, that's going to make your art look afraid and constricted and confined.
Yeah.
So give yourself the permission, and if you don't want to use good watercolor paper, I don't blame you. When I practice some of these techniques, I'll use the flip side of a piece of an old paper or a sketchbook. Like here, I've got a sketchbook and I was practicing some of the lines before. And I just say, okay, I'm going to get crazy trying to do these swirly things, and just do it on a, on an old piece of paper and go crazy and just try and bring it out and say, okay, what can I do with this paint? And let loose with it. That's the way you're going to get better, is to learn your materials and have fun with them and learn to control them so they don't control you like anything. So that brings us to the close of another session. I hope that you will practice these techniques. I have recorded this and I will send you the link and a couple other links to relevant little things to help you with these. Next week, we're going to put it all together. So what I need you to have is your card base. Decide what you want to do. This is the size, the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to show you different ways of constructing the card. Having a glue stick or some kind of adhesion. The best glue stick I have found is this Oohoo, because most glue sticks that are made for kindergartners, they are temporary. By the time you get around to sending this card, it will fall off. They also make like glue tape, which is kind of like a roller. I'll show you how to use this next week. So even if you have Elmer's glue or double stick tape, any of that will be helpful.
Katie, can you also please include the name of both of those cool brushes? The one that's a dagger and the other one that made that leaf?
Yeah, I will. I'll leave these out. So you want the round brush and the dagger?
Yeah, the one that was white and frizzy. That kind of made the branch that it was all spiky in your rose.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll do a brush description also.
Thank you.
Sure.
Katie,
Yes.
What is the best cardstock to use?
The cardstock, which would be our base that we would be fixing our watercolor paper onto. The best cardstock, I just use a 100-pound classic Crest. And this is a bright white or a solar white. They also make a natural white, which is softer, almost like an eggshell. It's not quite an ivory, but the weight that you
order some. If I want to order some online.
Oh, you could probably get it from Staples. I know they sell 80-pound, which is lighter. The higher the number, the heavier the paper. So if you were to get like a really heavy, like wedding invitation that was letterpress and it almost feels like cardboard, that's like a 220-pound. You don't want your card to exceed 1/8 of an inch in depth or in height, because the post office is going to charge you more. So we try and not build too many high layers on our cards. So we want our cardstock to be around the 100-pound range. That's what I have.
Is there a particular brand?
This is Anina is the mill, and this is a classic Crest. They make a Crane's Crest. Crane is a pretty expensive paper. So the classic Crest by Nina, I'm pretty sure you can get that at Staples. Also, Mohawk is another common mill whose papers you can find. And also, I think Target. In the Target stationery, they might have cardstock.
Michael's definitely does too, if that's easier for people.
Yes,
I know you're not a fan of Michael's, and you do have to know.
Michael's also sells, or they did, I haven't been into Michael's in a while. They sold the pre-folded card sets with an A2 envelope in white And some of the papers are duplex. So they might be like yellow on one side and white on the other. So the inside of your card would be white and the outside of your card would be a pastel color. So that's a duplex stock where it's a different color on each side.
And
When
they
I did it-
also,
Yeah.
they also sell cards that have very kind of simple printed background. So if you wanted to work on top of a
Yeah.
background that's there already, they
Yeah.
have interesting grounds that are not really designed as like an image, but just sort of as a backdrop.
Yes, in fact, that's one of the techniques I'm going to talk about next week. So thank you for that good segue for next week.
Can
Yeah,
I
they-
ask you something?
Yeah, of
How long is the video that you're sending us going to be on? Can we look at it any time or are we limited?
No, it's on my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is Katie Goldberg Art, I think.
Oh,
So on my channel are just not these classes, but there's other watercolor classes I've done and recorded. There's embroidery classes. So there's other classes that I've given that I store on my YouTube channel.
you teach
And-
embroidery also?
I did.
Oh, wow.
I did. That's like a winter thing. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. But if there's enough interest, I would. But last winter, I did not go to Florida. I stayed here all winter. This year in January, after I do my 3-week Zoom watercolor, I'm going to be in Florida and through March. So I won't teach. I might be able to concoct a Zoom situation in Florida, but I like Zooming from my studio because I have all my supplies here in Florida. I just have my little travel kit. So I like teaching from my studio where I have access to all my tools and materials.
It was a great class. Thank you.
Thank you. I will
Yeah.
see you girls next week and we'll put it all together.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good week. You'll be getting an email from me probably today or tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.